By the time I was 5, the physical abuse, the sexual, everything was so bad. I thought I would be better off dead, because then I wouldn't have to go back into that house. I wouldn't be beaten. I wouldn't have been punched. I wouldn't have all these things happen to me. I also had a very prominent speech impediment, so I was called a lot of names in my house, like stupid and klutz and all kinds of stuff. And my birth mother had said my days were numbered at that age, and so I thought I would just beat her to the punch. So I went out to the curb of my house, and I waited for a car to be coming by fast enough to jump in front of. And normally it was a very busy street. But on that particular day, no car came down the street. And as I was sitting there, my little 5-year-old self, I'm looking up into the big blue sky, and I'm wondering, how far does that sky go? How big must it be to cover all of these areas? And who made it? And is there someone or something bigger than the people that are hurting me every single day? And as I looked up into that sky, I heard this voice within that said, this is not the way. This is not the path I have for you. And I waited and nothing happened. So I finally went back up the long driveway, and I stood against the garage door. And in that moment, not really understanding fully what had just happened, I said, if you keep me alive, I will do whatever you call me to do. Now, I had no idea from age 5 through my life how painful and how desperate it would be. And there were a couple other times I tried to take my life. At 9, I tried to jump out a 2-story building out of our apartment house because I had been imprisoned for 3 months there because of a lie my birth brother told. And I wasn't allowed to go anywhere, have any friends, do anything. And yet God pulled me back. The last time my birth mother tried to kill me, I was 17. And I thought, that's it. You know, all this pain, I have nothing. There's nothing. I'm yesterday's garbage. I'm not even worth breathing. Because I had no self-esteem. I had no concept of what it would be like to even have a real friend. You couldn't tell anybody about your situation. My birth brother and I, you know, were at odds. He tried to smother me when I was little. He just was so angry. And it just was easier if he took out another person than he would have at least a chance of surviving. So fast forward through some of that, I made education and music, you know, my second salvation. If I did really well in school, guess what? I got a lot of affirmation. I had teachers that would call me their teacher's pet or whatever, but I worked hard. I was always the helper, always the one trying to please, trying to be perfect, trying to be funny, you know, do whatever it would take just to have a slice of peace and a slice of affirmation. Because somehow that voice in my heart would not let me go. And I remember one of the few times I was taken to church with my birth brother, I saw this radiant lady. She was over in the courtyard, and I was just a little thing. I've grown since then. And she just had the most beautiful face, the most beautiful expression, this gorgeous blonde hair, these white teeth. You know, could have been an angel, I don't know, but she was just stunning, and she was happy. And I looked at her, and I wondered, what are they talking about? She was talking to a taller guy. And I heard her say that Jesus loved all the children. And I thought, well, I'm a child. I wonder if he loves me. And so from that point, that vision saved me for many, many years, because I wanted to know who this Jesus was, and if he loved everybody, then I wanted to know what that love was. But it took a long time, a lot of years, and a lot of pain. But as I grew, I had a blind faith, a childlike faith in the God that I hadn't quite discovered yet. But I believed he was there, and I kept fighting for a purpose in my life. Yep, you have to fight sometimes. Nobody said it's easy. How many of you have birth certificates? Okay, do any of them say life is fair and everyone will love you? I'm thinking not. So you have to sometimes fight for that life, and I've been a fighter my whole life, and not just because I was born red, but I think that helps. I get away with a lot that way. It's like, oh, little red is out. So I went through high school, did very, very well. I had some amazing teachers. One of them, God bless her, taught me the gift of writing. You all have a gift that's incredible. And she taught me a way to express my inner self, to express praying. I didn't even know I was praying, but a way to write these things out so that I could connect with the Lord I believed in, but didn't really have that experiential love yet. I didn't understand what it felt like. I knew what it was. And then as I got out of high school, I worked 3 jobs, and then I went to college. And I graduated in 3 years. I wanted to just get in, get out, go on to life, right? And then I realized, yeah, life wasn't all that spectacular. You work hard, somebody named FICA gets part of your check, and then, you have all these bills. But it came in handy for later for when I had to explain that to our kids, so that's okay. So I graduated. I took a year off. I was still trying to have some kind of relationship. I don't know why, with my birth parents, but it just wasn't happening. And went to law school. I thought, I'm going to go to law school because if I become a lawyer, then I can save kids like me from the bad people, from the bad guys. What I found out in those days was that it wasn't about the justice we know through the love of Jesus Christ. It was about power and money and egos, and I saw kids being sent back to their abusive parents. The 2 times I did try to run away, I was sent back, and it was worse. It was a higher penalty than I ever had to pay. And so I thought, okay, I don't feel called to do this. I'm going to go back to business. Because at least in business, I have some control, and if I have money or if I have success, then I can share that, with other people and maybe do something. So I started getting involved with other organizations that help kids, halfway houses, and watching kids that while their parents were getting treatment. At one time, I had 10 kids under the age of 5, and I survived. So 2 hours with young kids, even in my early 20s, was a lot of work. But they were awesome. So fast forward through a very dark and abusive marriage. I took a left turn, but I didn't know what love was, so it's really not all that surprising. But I thought, okay, I made the choice, so I'm stuck with this. But deliverance doesn't always come in the package we'd like it to. So I was actually grateful. Yeah, it doesn't come the way we think it should come, neatly wrapped up in a bow, easy, painless, not expensive. So I was grateful. I was praying for those divorce papers to show up because I just wanted to be out and to be free. And I didn't want to have to be the one to make the choice. I was willing to own my promise to God no matter what it cost me. And at that point, I did not have great health, but I didn't know it. So God delivered me, and we began an experientially great love relationship. I finally experienced him in a little chapel in Encino, California, where I was taken. I didn't want to go. I just was like, okay, I'll go just to shut this person up, right? Sorry, but that was the way it was. And I was not feeling well. I thought, okay, I'm just going to go. It's an hour and a half away, but I'm going to go. The only 2 seats, they were not reserved like ours was, thank you very much. The only 2 seats in that little chapel were right in front of the speaker. And don't you know, that speaker was speaking just to me, not anybody else, I'm sure, but just to me the entire 2 hours. And I wept. I was so broken. It was like God was calling my heart out. And she talked about someone who'd been crying out to God for years, like a lot of years, and how he had heard my cries, how he was healing me in layers, how he was with me at all times, that he had never left me, that he was with me in a new and refreshed way. But it would take time. It wasn't going to be an overnight. I remember B.J. Thomas talking about his testimony, and he quit drugs and everything all in one night, but I don't know too many people that have that experience. And so God was preparing me, and when she was done speaking, I remember her coming and sitting next to me. People had left, and she didn't say a word. She just put her arms around me. She started rocking me back and forth, and I thought, this must be what it's like when a mom comforts her child. I was 31 years old. I had never experienced that safely. It's the first time I really felt God as comforter. And then he came and he showed me who he was as provider through a divorce where I got nothing. I had the vacuum and my silverware. That was it, but I was grateful. The day I got my first little TV and a whole couch, I was so excited. And we had that couch for a long time. But he rebuilt my life again. He transformed me again, okay? And as I grew in him, my life grew. And as a couple years passed by, he introduced me to the man he wanted me to marry. And boy, did that work out great. 20 years later, it's just the most awesome experience and relationship I've ever had. And that's a whole nother story. So if we have time, I'll share that with you because it's really cute. But so God brought me a man who maybe didn't understand everything I had been through, but knew that he would be there, listen to me, and always want my best. I never had anyone that wanted me without an agenda, without being something or of some value to them or some whatever it was they needed from me. I always had to give. I always had to pay. I always had to prove I was worth being with. And suddenly there was someone who just loved me. And again, God was showing himself in that gift. And so fast forward to 2008, November 2008, Thanksgiving, we were serving dinners to the homeless folks in Redmond Senior Center, and Ed and I saw these young girls, and they couldn't have been more than 17, possibly 18. They had little newborns in their arms, and I found out they were living in their cars. And I thought, that's just wrong. That's just wrong on all levels. And Ed and I, it was 2008. Ed has a construction company. Anyone remember what happened in 2008? Huge crash. And we thought we were going to make it through, but and we did. Our faith, our marriage, and our house, but everything else that we had worked for our lives was gone. So we didn't have a lot of extra. But as we walked out, I thought, we have to figure something out. We said, well, what if we feed them? What if we get a warehouse and we rent someplace and we feed them all? Well, that's a good start, but then what do you do after they eat today? Okay. Well, okay, what if we feed them and then maybe have like a dorm-style shelter, just sleep them for a few nights? Well, that's better, but then what do they do after those few nights? So as God brought it together, our friend Dee Dee, who's here today, she helped me put a website up in April of 2009. Because see, in the same time, October of 2008, I had the fourth of what is now 9 traumatic brain injuries. And I couldn't work. I can barely remember what day it was. So she helped I had to figure out something else to do because I lost my position as a corporate trainer for the healthcare system. And Ed was struggling to keep our little business and everything else going. And so we put a little website up with our vision, with our plan, and we stepped out in faith. Because I thought, Lord, I can't even remember what day it is. How am I going to do anything to help people? But he showed me a different path. He said, you know what? I got something else for you to do. And so as our vision grew, we raised money over a couple years to become a 501c3. And let me tell you, when you think things are impossible, how many of you think the IRS is impossible? Just saying. Well, from the day we mailed that application to the day it was approved, it was 11 days. Someone on the other end of that application wanted Beulah's Place. And not only that, it was September 11th. And so 2 great tragedies, human trafficking and our country's greatest tragedy. And so I thought how poignant that was. And so we kept moving, and we started taking in kids. Ed and I have had 16 kids in our home on and off over the last 4 or 5 years. The others have been taken in by other families. They love our kids because they see what happens when you give 3 to 4 months to one teenager who needs food regularly, a bed regularly, clean water, fresh clothes, transportation to and from school or a job. Okay, and what we do, for 11 years, we have been 100% volunteer driven. No one's been paid. Everything we get goes to the kids and to the programs. And it hasn't always been easy. We've had kind of a slow year this year, and we're just, it's like, okay, Lord, you got a plan. I don't know what it is, but, so far so good. We're just making it, so it's okay. We've had high times, low times, but at all times, He has provided for these kids. At all times, no one has gone hungry. At all times, there's a job for these kids. At all times, we find a place. Even when I didn't have a place for the boys, I'm like, I don't even know what we're going to do. We don't have a place for the boys. What are we going to do? So it's like, Lord, that's your problem. So respectfully, it's on your tab because I don't know and I can't let these babies go back out to the street. And so he did. He provided a lady who had raised sons and a trailer and some other stuff. It's not always the best, but it's better than homeless. It's better than being on the other end of a needle trying to end your life, or the end of a bottle of pills. And one of our girls who did end up trying to take her life just after we had just gotten her, she ran into her abusers ×3 in one day. And when she woke up in the hospital, she'll tell you this, even today, she says, every time I woke up, you were there, or Ed was there, or my house mom was there. I've never woken up to anyone that cared before, that cared that I lived, that cared that I mattered. And she is now kicking life in a great way. So with these kids, when we take them, we strive to create that plan for them. We love unconditionally. I don't care how many piercings, how many tattoos, if their hair's long, short, sideways, doesn't matter. We take them in if they fit the program. Not all the kids that call us get into our program because they don't want to do the work. And we're structured. That's the only way we can give these kids what they need so that they can be the adults they're designed to be. Because after all they've been through, there's still a child inside. Just like me, there's still a kid inside there, sometimes. and she likes to have fun and she likes to do things, but I know when I have to be the adult. And sometimes these adults act like kids in adult situations and they need some guidance. But at all times, they know they're responsible for their choices. Because if the only thing they ever learn from us is to be accountable, they'll be ahead of most people in life. And so whatever they choose, we're there. One of our gals, her father was a religious leader, violated her. The mother, over and over, the mother finally divorced him, became a raging alcoholic, got a boyfriend, left the girl home for 4 years from 12 to 16 with frozen food in the freezer for 6 days a week. The only time the mother came home was when the girl tried to commit suicide or the school called. And yet she managed to keep a 3.2 GPA, rehabbed herself, but couldn't ever get that traction she needed to get past those things. And mother finally married that man, and her daughter was recruited by a female predator in Redmond. Woman was 30 years old and somehow got connected with our gal, and we'll call her Allison, and she took her to lunch. Who doesn't like to go to lunch? I love to go to lunch. Anyone that cooks for me, I love them. And then she bought her gifts, and this is big news for a 17-year-old that has no one, okay? And in a couple of months' time, this woman said, hey, I've got some friends down the street. They're staying in a motel. Let's go visit them. And from there, you can fill in the blanks. Because it took a while for that girl, even with our help, to get away from that person. Because predators are very patient, and they're very stealth. They're very good at hiding who they really are. And so I tell people, you really don't know who your neighbor is, or that teacher, or that coach. Do the work. Find out if they've had background checks. Find out who your kids are spending time with. If you are both working or you're a single parent working, make sure some adult you trust is walking your child to school, or at least watching the street they're on, because it's so quick. Here in Redmond, we do have instances of that happening. Sometimes they go to the homeless shelters overnight while they're transporting with a U-Haul or some moving truck saying, hey, we're just moving, town to town and we don't have money for a hotel. There are so many ways that these predators create because they want our product. People from Portland are coming for our kids and our teenagers. So this needs to be the town and the city and the organization that says not here, not anymore. We're going to stand up for our kids. We're going to be more aware. We're going to find the tools to do that. I'm going to help you with that. So a couple of things that I tell people. First of all, if you're not sure if you're seeing something, go to the police department and say, look, what are my parameters? What can I report, or what should I look for? And when do I call 911? Okay, you don't want to get paranoid and call 911 everyone, just, because you see a man with a young person or a woman with a young boy. You want to be a little bit aware, okay? And I speak across the country and I say the same thing. There's a wonderful movie that we've been given the rights to now called Ring of Silence. I would love to have a showing in our area. It is a story based on 1,000 victim stories of how stealth our kids are being recruited by other kids for trafficking. Whether you have grandkids or they're your own kids or your sister's kids, this movie, as a victim looking at that, the director did not miss a step. And so it is educational for as many people to see that. We also, and I thank you very much for putting it on the bulletin, have a book out just this week, a few days ago. Ed, if you could just bring that to me, please, real quick. A Fragile Thread of Hope has part of my story. 4 of the girls from this community that we rescued, boys were a little more bashful, and that's okay. And they shared some of their stories, raw faith, raw hope. If you need to be inspired, if you have someone who needs to know a little bit more about who these kids really are, they are not the hellions, they are not the criminals, they're not the rebellious ones, although they may have rebelled against being hurt. But there are other reasons why they chose the streets for safety. And the streets just aren't safe. We're a great and a generous community, but we need to do more because every day kids go missing. It's bad enough that every day 5 kids die just from child abuse, and most of them are under the age of 5. It's bad enough we have videos of parents beating their kids, and people think that's entertainment. But this is our future. So use a book, use the movie. The proceeds from this book go to victims of child abuse and sex trafficking, a portion of them. Our writer who gave up 4 years of her life while I was recovering from my brain injuries, she helped. And so we are putting it back into community. And one of the ways we're doing that is I'm going to Washington, D.C. again in November with one of our teens that graduated a few years ago from our program, and she's a 3-time Dean's List student, and she has been accepted to every university she's applied to. So I want to take her with me, and we're going to speak on Capitol Hill. We have some nonpartisan senators and Congress people and organizations, and we are going to rally this country to be a collective voice against human trafficking, against child sex trafficking in particular. And then next spring, we're going to have a march in Washington to do that. And we're hoping to have 1 million people show up against trafficking. If we can cut into the business, we're never going to take away the depravity except through the blood of Jesus Christ. Okay? But human nature is what it is. So what we need to do is make sure it's harder for them to get the kids to this country. It's harder for them to transport them. We put walls around our churches, our schools, our homes. We have storage units for things that we love, but we allow our children to be used as a commodity. And I am asking and inviting you all to participate with us in building a better place for those kids. One of the things we're doing as I wrap up is that we bought a building in faith. Boy, was it in faith. The old Boys and Girls Club. And I just felt like the Lord said, go for it. And it was a fight to get the building. It's here in Redmond. It serves all of Central Oregon. We're not open yet. We still have a little bit of loan to pay, but we wanted a permanent place. So any teenager, any 14 to 20-year-old can come in for food, clothing, counsel, recreation that's not cellular oriented, a barbecue, whatever. Work skills. We're going to have a mini thrift store in there. And so we're going to need bodies. We're going to need people. We definitely need resources. And so we are working hard. We can open as soon as the building is ready, as soon as God says it is finished. So I want to thank you for your time. So much to tell you in so little time. But I want you to know that I love your heart, and I love you for having us here and being willing to hear about a tough topic. But the hope, as Pastor Chuck said, seriously, I'm almost 60 years old. Look what God has done. He took filthy, ugly, nasty, and turned it into something really decent. So if you're struggling, if you have shame, if you have guilt, if you have anything, God paid for that. Christ paid for that already. Okay, so let it go. Okay, reach out to us and let us help you build your life, because He wants you to be as free as possible, because that's where we all shine, in His love. So thank you, Jesus. I praise you and I thank you, and I'm going to give it back to Pastor Chuck.
So there's There's a song that Hillsong Worship wrote a few years ago called Glorious Ruins. And when you think of just that phrase, oftentimes when we look at ruins, we don't think of something that is glorious. But when God gets a hold of it, when God gets a hold of our ruins, he builds something glorious. Time and time and time again. You heard just a glimpse of that and saw that this morning in what the Lord has done and birthed from Andi's story. And as she said, there's several different ways that we can do something. Prayer, number one, always. Prayer is a first response, not a last resort. Amen? Time to start treating prayer that way. Ask for God's favor. One, learn how to become more aware. You could partner with Beulah's Place. Go to their website. There's a donation tag. You could talk to Andi and Ed today. They'd be more than happy to answer questions. Maybe you want to volunteer. Maybe you're one of those handymen. You want to volunteer some time building or helping over there. Talk to them. Every little bit makes a difference. Andi is being sought out nationally to come and talk. That is God's favor. And I believe that from a national perspective, it's going to have local implications and local blessings. Jesus is also about social causes. He's about lives and restoring and helping. And he continually in his word challenges his people to care for widows, orphans, abused, down and out, those in need. And he calls his people, aka us, the church, to do something about it. And even if it's a little something, maybe you don't have time to give, but you have money to give. By all means, follow his generous lead and do so. But God is doing something. And for me, it excites me to be something and be a part of something that is so much bigger than just myself. It's one of the many reasons that I wanted Andi to be here this morning, so that you know that there's something in our community that we can partner with as individuals in a church. And so my prayer for you as you seek him is that you'll be open to his lead. One of the things that John Richmond originally said also, he said, never saw myself in this role, but so thankful that God paved the way for me to see people rescued, restored, and those brought to justice who have done wrong. What a beautiful picture. God is still painting. He's still building. He's still making something glorious out of something that looked ruined and ugly. And he goes, oh, it's not ugly to me, and it's not ruined. Watch this. I hope you feel that way every time you look in the mirror. God has done something in each and every one of us. And he has asked us out of that to invite others into that process. New Hope is going to sing another song here. And it's a song that maybe some of you are familiar with from the movie The Greatest Showman. And maybe you're out there and go, well, that's an odd song to do on a Sunday morning. But when you hear the lyrics, I believe it will fit. And the truth is, the God that we serve, the God that we live for, is the God of dreams, the God of hopes. And he continually instills these in his people. And I've said this before, I would rather have one God idea than several good ideas. I'd rather have one God dream than a dream birthed out of too much pizza late at night. Right? For these young people that Andi was talking about, they didn't know you could dream. A lot of them didn't know that there's hope available, that there is life different beyond the norm that they currently know. And we have the opportunity to speak God's hope and dreams, love and life into them. Amen?